just before popping on this, I was having a look at your LinkedIn page, and I was scrolling down. You know where it has all the kind of different your experiences
Greatest
and your jobs and stuff.
hits. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it goes back a long time. Like you've been in business a long time throughout loads of different things,
Trucking
and
away.
I kind of like it's kind of I got that kind of feeling like shit. You've gone through some stuff there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been a good. I wouldn't change much about it. It's been a good. I started young, I guess. Soberlane was kind of my first business, and we're 20 this year or next year, sometime around now. So it's been that's been kind of the one constant in the background. And then most of the things have been hospitality related in some way or another. Yeah, it's been mostly enjoyable.
yeah, cool. And so so before you, I suppose, started your own business? What's your background? Did you do some in college or?
So my mother, father, brother, solicitor are all solicitors.
Oh well.
So that they're all. I was the only one not good enough for those exams. Didn't have the brains for it. Definitely didn't have the patience to be in an office all day. Um, but my dad was always self-employed, so that's kind of what I grew up in that background. And kind of, I suppose, when I say unstructured working hours, like he loves work. He's 72 and he still works all the hours because he just loves it. My brother and sister work with him. My mom's retired, but that kind of was the background. So becoming self-employed kind of, it wasn't that I didn't have a choice, but it just kind of felt like a natural. It was always
Yeah,
an option, I guess.
yeah,
Um, so I was okay at school. Went to college, studied business, enjoyed it. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I did commerce. It's a good kind of an all-rounder degree. After that, I spent a year trying to be a chef. Realized that that is probably the hardest job in the world. I loved it, and I still love cooking. But and when we opened Sober Lane, I worked in the kitchen doing lunches for a couple of years, and I loved it. But when I say cooking, paninis and whatever else. Um, but uh, I always found it a great frustration actually as a chef. I remember even in the training college, they'd have like guests in for lunch, and you slave away in the kitchen, you serve the food, and then like everyone tells the waiter, "Oh, this food is amazing," and then they
yeah,
give the waiter the tip, and I'm going, "Hey, like I'm the guy peeling potatoes in the background, looking through that little hatch."
yeah,
Whereas if there's negative feedback, like if they send
yeah,
back the food, you hear about it. But
yeah.
so I always was very into food since then. And I started. I didn't know what I wanted to do after that. Most of everyone else in the class went off and did a. The next step would have been to do a placement, like I'd go on to culinary arts year two, and I knew I didn't want to be a chef, and but I wanted to do food related, and uh, a friend of a friend of a friend offered me a job running a bar. When I say running a bar, the bar was about twice the size of this car. It was a little bar called Cleavers. For anyone from Cork who remembers it, I was there for a year and I adored it. And the guys who owned it owned many bars, and they kind of had this model where they'd bring in a young person, and if it went well, then they'd offer them a partnership. And I remember going to my dad and said, "Look, these guys have offered me a chance to buy into the business, and it's going really well. And I'm enjoying it." I was maybe 22, I think, 21, and my dad said, "So you're going to do 100% of the work for 10% of the profits?" So I said, "Okay, well, that's not, when you put it like that, it's not a great deal."
Yeah.
He said, "Why don't you buy your own bar?" So I said, "Well, the small matter of no money." And so this was 2005, at a time when
It
banks were lending.
was easy to get money, yeah.
Yeah, it was maybe too easy hindsight, but so he backed me, and we got a loan and started Sober Lane, and yeah, that was it. It was a way and a hack then. Yeah, so,
Oh,
Sober Lane, thankfully, has always been a good, reliable business. It's it doesn't feel like it changed that much, but when I look back, I was looking the other day, and we were serving margarita pizzas for €7. So like a lot has changed since
yeah,
2006,
yeah,
or €7 or 8. But uh, so it has changed in some regards, but yeah, that's so
yeah.
it's been an enjoyable one.
So, like anyone in Cork would know Sober Lane. A lot, yeah, as you said, 20 odd years, a long time around. Um, I suppose, like that's an awful long time. If you look at the stats for, businesses, maybe 10% or whatever it is, the last 5 years, 10 years. What's the kind of, what do you put that down to? How have you managed to survive so long?
Um, I think I'm lucky in that I started, when I say a following, it wasn't like I was particularly popular or anything, but I was probably the first person out of my group to open a business that people could support. You know what I mean? They could all come
Right.
to pubs. I'm very lucky. I played rugby, not particularly well, but I had lots of friends from that, and school friends and college friends. And then all those college friends went off and started working in big companies like KPMG and PwC and all the letters. And they got in because they were young corporate social, so whatever the kind of socializing committees.
Yeah.
So we started getting all that business, and
Okay.
I went away to. It's funny. what I would describe as innovation now, and it seems so kind of naive or simple, but I did a J1 visa, worked in a bar in Boston, kind of bar backing and running food, and we came back. We were the first bar in Cork that I know of, anyway, 2006, to serve pizzas and pitchers of
Well,
beer. Now I've no doubt there was place. I think West Timers did, and Preachers, maybe the original Preachers did pitchers of beer. But we did a pizza and a pitcher of beer for, I think, 20 quid, and a pizza and a bottle of wine for 20 quid, and that just flew. It flew. But that eating in pubs, most pubs did like carvery by day, but very few did food in the evening, and the ones that
yeah,
did were effectively restaurants. So combining that was winner for us. And then when the end of the world happened, crack in 2008, I was kind of oblivious to it because we're in our own little bubble. You know what I mean? I knew our breaking was the macro things didn't really affect it that much for us. And
yeah,
our food offering, I suppose people who used to go to restaurants, like didn't have disposable income for that, but they came to us, because it was a cheaper option. And
yeah,
randomly, like this, I wouldn't say like change brings opportunity, but we had buckets going away parties. Like the World and its Mother were going away to Australia, so every one of them
yeah, yeah.
had a big shindig. And like for 2 years, like every Friday and Saturday night, we'd go on away parties. And it was exceptionally nice, actually, in 2014, 15, 16. There was a run of about 2 years when I was coming home parties, which was a great buzz for, to bookend that journey for people.
Yeah.
But so we just, I suppose, right place, right time. Right place, right time. I know there's a phenomenal restaurant. I don't know if you've ever been there. I think you would love it. Called Isaac's in, I'd say Isaac's is there, 30 years
Yeah,
in
I've
Cork on
heard of
Kirk
it.
Street,
Yeah.
really good. And some of the when I say the kids, like they were my age, we're not kids anymore, obviously, but worked with me in Sober Lane over the years. So I would have asked their advice on Michael and Catherine, the people who own it. And he'd be a great guy for you to meet, actually, because he was involved in Ireland's first Michelin star restaurant, Our
Oh
Beautiful Lodge,
wow,
all
yeah,
this kind of stuff.
yeah.
Really cool story.
Wow.
But Michael, in I think the 80s, when obviously another recession, went over to Stanford, and computers were in the early days then, but a computer created a model for him to create like a recession-proof or a recession-friendly restaurant.
Right.
And they designed Isaac's to be that model, and obviously it has worked,
Yeah.
and it seems to be always busy through all the years. But I wouldn't say we did that in Sober Lane by design, but in the same breath, it was a place where we always tried to keep it affordable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that has stood to us, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And then moving on then to I suppose the last couple of weeks and months with Trump and the tariffs. I have to ask you for that because obviously, you're involved in that space as well.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
you put up something on LinkedIn about when the Taoiseach went to visit the White House. You were kind of glad with the whole how it all went.
Yeah.
It seemed like you were kind of a nervous period for you, but yeah, can I ask you about that? I don't know much about that whole thing. What's your old take on the
Yeah.
tariffs?
I think uncertainty is always unhelpful in business because people will, and rightly so, maybe plan for the worst. So I mean, if the worst happens, it's an absolute, you can deal with it and you can figure it out. But when there's uncertainty, it's
Right.
everything's just
Yeah.
pause. So I think that no, I would say 10%. It's funny. I think again the uncertainty is the problem with it because like our cost of goods has gone up 10%, no doubt, over the last couple of years. A multiple of that between, like, when you think about whiskey production, there's two big cost drivers, and that's energy for heat, which has obviously gone way up, and grain. And a lot of European grain would come from Ukraine. So even if you weren't necessarily using European grain to make, or Ukrainian grain to make your whiskey, overall the prices have gone up. So the 10% isn't the end of the world, but the negative associations with it are. And funnily enough, I thought we sell quite well online in the US, and I thought that we did a bit of a campaign saying we're going to hold our price while stocks last, and
Yeah.
try and get like a rush before the tariff. And it didn't really, when it went to 20%, it didn't really make a
Right.
difference. And then it dropped to 10%, and prices picked up, volume picked up nicely. But we hadn't changed our price at all.
Yeah.
Like there's, it's just that perception rather than the actual price sometimes. It is a tricky one though, and a big one. The unlevel playing field in relation to Northern and Ireland, the Republic, are particularly the big competitor for Irish whiskey is Scotch. So if they're at a different tariff, it is unhelpful. It's unhelpful.
So is it something that you're like, does it keep you up at night? Like, are you very worried about it, the whole tariff situation?
Thankfully, we have a very good core business in Ireland,
Right.
and the US would be about half our exports, about 25% of our business. So it is significant.
Yeah.
But if you think that the tariff will affect it by, say, 20%, which would be big, but
Yeah.
you're talking about 5% of your business.
I get you.
So the challenge now is to try and drive it 5% somewhere else. And I think the only catch there is while Irish whiskey is growing lots of the markets, it's not just a case of like tell the container ship turn around and send it somewhere else. You know, it takes a long time to go and grow those
Yeah.
things. But again, swings and roundabouts. So Black Emerald, another project I'm involved in, we're launching later in the summer. Our plan was always to concentrate in emerging markets. Not that like it was designed 2 years ago, long before the Trump
Yeah.
stuff. And now it kind of looks like we have a crystal ball, and people say, "Oh, you're great not to be dependent on the US," but it's just
Right.
right time, right place. We don't even have a product out. Like
Yeah.
it might there might be no tariffs by the time we launch. But again, it's just perception. You know, it
Yeah.
looks like we've made a good decision at the moment. So I'll take the credit.
Yeah.
I'll take the kudos while it's there.
So a few quick ones, Ernest. I appreciate your
Far
time.
away, of course.
LYQD, that's another business
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
have
liquid.
going. Tell me about that.
It's something that I learned from when we're building Kinsale Spirit Company. So our distillery is only being completed at the moment. It's very nearly there actually, which is exciting. But so we've had to buy whiskey from other people, and I suppose we're lucky. We've got to know the industry, and we have a great relationship with West Cork Distillers and Great Northern Distillery, the two kind of big whiskey wholesalers in Ireland. But I know lots of people who've bought casks. I don't know if you know anyone who has an
No,
uncle or a father or cousin who
no.
said, "Oh yeah, I'm after buying a cask." But for me, I think there's a big lack of price transparency, but also there's nowhere to sell them that I can see. Somebody says, "I've bought a cask and I'm going to age of 10 years and they're going to sell it." I can say, how are you going to sell it? Who are you going to sell it to? Oh, the distillery will probably buy it back off me. So you wouldn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like great exit strategy. So, and in the same breath, with whiskey, you have to lay it down for a long period of time. So like it's capital intensive. So it's a big opportunity for outside capital to come in there and invest in it. So I know this is a long answer for a short question, but
No, you're
the
good.
idea was just to make buying and selling of whiskey easier and safer. That's
So,
it. So you buy a cask and then you sell it.
is whiskey is it like an investment to people? Like is it like people buy and sell gold and stuff? Is
Yeah, so
whiskey similar?
it's to be an investment in the interim period. So the distillery make it because that's what they do. It
Yeah.
gets to sit there for a period of at least 3 years to be Irish whiskey, and invariably it's going to sit for longer. It appreciates in value at quite a steady rate. Traditionally, it's tended to be fairly recession-proof, so it's a
Yeah.
pretty good rate of inflation or appreciation as it goes. And then at the end of it, ultimately, its life cycle, it has to end up in have a real use case, like end up in bottles. A bit
Right.
like gold ultimately ends up as jewelry or industrial uses. But in between, it's an appreciating asset. It's a good store of value. So there's a good opportunity there for people to invest in it. And I think that the part of the puzzle that's missing is and a way to exit it when you want to.
Yes.
Like an
Yeah.
investment, you need liquidity, hence the name liquid.
Yeah.
And people's circumstances change. That for better or for worse, they might want, like, it's only natural to want to exit an investment.
Yeah.
And ideally when you want. So that's the idea of liquid. And the other side of it is in the UK, there's been some nasty publicity around. It's funny,
Fake whiskey,
yeah,
right?
but it's really around fraud. It's not so much that the whiskey, there's anything wrong with the whiskey. It's just the whiskey was never there. The people could have been selling imaginary houses, but just because
Right.
the nature of them being hidden away in warehouses,
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
the easiest thing to check.
Yeah.
So that's why we say easier and safer. So we verify the casks are there before you even start.
Okay.
So just, yeah, I think you'll always have bad actors and fraud in any industry, but it's just a pity that it disproportionately gives it as a bad name as an investment class, which is unfortunate, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. So very different kind of like the done deal of whiskey almost. Very different business to what you're doing with
Yeah.
Soberlane, and then you had the nightclubs. When you look at I always look at kind of businesses, and I'm always interested in different businesses. Is there anything that you'd look at, say if you were to start again, or if you were to advise something, I don't know, someone else starting, any kind of business opportunity out there that you see that you think is kind of an interesting space?
That is a good one. I saw. I've looked at. I know you. I heard you talking about franchise models recently, and I've been to all those shows, and I find them very interesting. We actually, it's something I feel there's an opportunity there, but I haven't been able to do it, or don't have the energy or the bandwidth to do it. Skills maybe, but I feel there is a lot of pubs that have a fear of food, but have a good
Yeah.
location for it, and
Yeah.
can't execute it properly, or don't want to, whatever. And I do feel that there is an opportunity there to put in a solution, ideally a franchise solution. So I think it's standardized for margins and purchasing and even marketing, and then just quality. I do think there's something missing there, and it bugs me because in Ireland for a long time pubs were that third space, homework pub, and
Yeah.
it was where people celebrated, people met, people went on dates, and even like committees met and politicians met, and then that kind of got replaced by like coffee shops. I think we missed So, like you would go to work from a coffee shop for a day, but like you'd never go to work from a pub for
Yeah.
the day. I don't know why that is. Like
Yeah.
we've got seats, nobody's using them by day. And similarly with food, I think like why do pubs have to be one or the other? In Sober Lane, we've worked really hard to make it like a pub and a restaurant, and to some extent we've even failed at that because we've had to physically divide it into a pub and a restaurant
Right.
because we found people preferred knowing and more clearly defined, wanted to know, okay, now I'm in the
Yeah.
restaurant, now
Yeah.
I'm in the pub. But I do think there's an opportunity there for food, and just in general, I think franchising is a very interesting, very interesting model. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Last one for Ernest. Advice you would have for someone, a young entrepreneur that wants to start their own business, what would it be?
I, I've been asked that before, and I've given the same answer, and I don't think I'd change it, even though I think it comes across as
Mhm.
naive. I've been the beneficiary of it. I'm not particularly into business books and all
Right.
that kind of, because I think they're very much the dog eat dog, and you need to have a nice bath at 5 o'clock in the morning and all that crap,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it works for some people, great. But I think that uh, it's nice to be nice, and I genuinely find maybe it's more of a belief system with karma and things like that. But I like any area that I've looked to get into. So before I opened the Sober Lane, there was two or three I considered to be like, say, the best publicans in town, and ultimately they were going to be competitors. I asked, could I meet them? Extremely giving of the time and their help. Same with restaurants, same with the whiskey business. I don't think anyone's ever said no. And it's still, I'd bring them up and I'd say, geez, what are we going to do about this tariffs? Are you going to put up our price? I always take the call. I think just like most people invariably are nice if you ask them for
Yeah.
help. If they don't, that's on them. And I think then you got to pay that back when people ask you. But I do think it's nice to be nice. It's just a good business. Doesn't have to be. You don't have to be an asshole to succeed in business. I think. That's giving me a pre-qualification that I've succeeded in business. I'm not so sure I have. I'm still on that journey, and we'll see. But it certainly makes it more enjoyable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also think like there's lots of business out there. Like if you have a good enough product, it will succeed. That's the. It's not like that they're going to buy mine or yours. They might buy both if they're both good enough. So yeah, for me, it's nice to be nice. It's just a good. It's something that people have said to me, and I've benefited from it. So yeah, I think it's a good one. The other one, it's far less. I don't know, but that turnover for
Yeah.
vanity, profit for sanity. Like it is, like we were doing a cracking Deliveroo business with delivery in Sober Lane, like a lot of it. But then yeah, but is it profitable and is it the best
Yeah.
product that we can do? Or the products travel better, or people have different models. I know you had a very successful food delivery business and that ghost kitchen thing. So it's the challenges of it and the pros and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, I do think that I've fallen for that turnover trap before,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
profit really margins is where it's at.
Yeah.
Particularly at the moment, margins is where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. There's an ending to that a lot of people don't know. Which is cash is king at the end. Kind of
Yeah,
like the full.
that is
That
it.
nearly caught me out when I had a business because we were buying these boxes, for one of the brands, and it was like 150 per box, and then we found that we get them in the UK for like 50 cents a box. So I think we got like 5,000 for like 5-6 grand or something, whatever it was,
Yeah, yeah,
and nearly put us out of business
yeah.
because the bank account was empty and they didn't sell.
We had a business called the Sugar Cube, and it was a creperie. And I love crepes, and I don't love selling crepes though because it really didn't work. And
Yeah.
but we thought this was going to be great. We're going to over 100 them. So like we have 1 million Sugar Cube coffee cups and crepe
Yeah,
packaging, and even the fact that it was crepe packaging isn't like can't really be used for
no,
anything else except crepes.
no.
So like. Oh yeah, I know all about that. Economies of scale. Cash is king is a
Yeah.
good one. They're very tempting, particularly when you get to the size of kind of thinking about if you can order from China. Like it's a big one, bottles,
Mm.
for us. But yeah, that is and as well you might wait 6 months for those
Yeah.
bottles or that packaging to come.
Yeah.
So you need it and you have money tied up in it for a long time. So okay, turnover for vanity, profit for sanity, cash is king. I
Yeah.
like it. I've learned something today, Evan, and I thought I would. Yeah.
There you go.
Good man.
Ernest, thanks a million.
I
We've
really
gone
enjoyed it.
over time, but I could chat to you all day.
That was
But yeah,
brilliant. Thank you so much.
appreciate the time,
Good
man.
man. Keep it up.